happiness was about living a virtuous life and not just one seeking pleasure. The framework for well-being that I'm going to be presenting was developed by psychologist Martin Seligman, who has been termed the father of positive psychology. Positive psychology, again, emphasizes personal strengths and building upon what is right with us. According to this model, there are 5 core elements: positive meaning, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And you'll see that the acronym is PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. Keep that acronym in mind, so I'm going to be referring it off and on throughout the presentation. The first core element, positive emotion. I think positive emotion, for most of us, is what we think about right away when we think about the word happy. There are myriad positive emotions: hopefulness, empowered, excited, inspired, just tons of them, right? And happy. Having fun at a ball game, joking around with friends, laughing with family, make us happy. And undoubtedly, frequent positive emotions are very important for overall happiness. However, it's not possible to be in a pleasant state all the time. And this is okay. Keeping expectations in line with reality helps to keep our thinking and our emotions balanced. Importantly, unfortunately, there are many elements of afterlife well-being besides transient pleasure. Incidentally, there's a 50 to 60% genetic predisposition to positive affectivity. So some of us are just more naturally cheerful than others, right? I don't think I'm blessed with that gene to a large extent. Perhaps many of you are much more so inclined. Okay, so that's the first core element. The next core element is termed engagement. Being one with an absorbing activity. Frequent activities of engagement are important to well-being. Engagement refers to full involvement with an activity. When engaged, one does not think about personal inadequacies, as the mind is focused entirely on the activity. The ego is not in play. And oftentimes there's a sense of serenity and clarity when engaged. Engagement to its fullest extent has been termed flow by a psychologist, Csikszentmihalyi. I have memorized how to pronounce it. A Hungarian-American psychologist. You probably have heard of that word flow. It's mental health circles that's used quite often. Within a flow state, there's very little self and time consciousness. Time just seems to kind of go by, right? And we're not thinking about ourselves, our worries, our preoccupations, our stressors. We're just involved in the activity. When we're in flow states, the activity is experienced as intrinsically rewarding. Csikszentmihalyi first got interested in this concept, this phenomenon, in looking at artists who, in their work, just they kind of got lost in their work. And so he started wondering about what's going on with these states of mind. I want to ask you guys, anybody willing to share activities of engagement where you feel like you're kind of in a flow? Anybody?
Yeah, when I'm in my garden.
Perfect example, right? Yeah. Are you thinking about your self-esteem when you're gardening? Are you thinking about, gee, I've got to do this in 25 more minutes? Not so much, right?
Time disappears.
Time disappears, right? Yeah. If there's not many activities of engagement during the course of a week, a month, you're more vulnerable to getting or to feeling distracted and scattered, going through the motions mindlessly, right? Um, I know that when I'm ruminating about something, which I often do, I tell myself, just engage. Get engaged with something, right? It could be work. It could be woodworking. I used to do some woodworking. And that was kind of like gardening for you, Dick, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Fred.
When I sing in the choir, even rehearsal and practice for Apollo or for chorus players, I just feel like I'm one with the chorus.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Good example. Yeah. Was there another hand?
Yes.
Yeah. Tom?
When I'm kayaking.
Great example. Yeah, right. Nature. Yeah. Very.
I love to mow the lawn.
Mow the lawn.
When it's time to mow the lawn, I just get happy.
I'm free. Look at my work. I'd like to add your happiness if you want some more.
I'll stop paying Dylan Brown.
Well, I work with baby for infants, but when I'm giving a baby a bottle and holding baby and then here's your bottle and launching them, I'm like not thinking about myself or.
What a nice image. Yeah, just that back and forth. Yeah. Okay, so engagement, another core element. Relationships. No surprise. We've known for a long time about the importance of social connection. Human beings are social creatures. According to Robert Waldinger, psychiatrist and professor at Harvard, this core element might just be the most important one. Waldinger is the fourth director of a Harvard longitudinal study that began in 1938. It's still going. It started with 724 participants, half of which were Harvard students and half of which were inner city boys from Boston. It now includes 3 generations and more than 1,300 descendants of the original 724. This is the longest in-depth longitudinal study of humans ever done. The study set out to identify what makes humans thrive. Every few years, the same participants are interviewed thoroughly about their lives, and I mean thoroughly. After exhaustive statistical and qualitative analyses, a single principle has emerged repeatedly, over and over and over again. Good relationships, more than any other variable, keep people healthier and happier. Surprise anybody? Not really, right? Yeah. Sadly, loneliness is an epidemic in the United States. 20% of adults in the United States report feeling lonely on a daily basis. 20%. That's striking, right? It's a lot. All right. The fourth element, and these are not presented in any order of importance, although they do help with the acronym PERMA, to be listed this way. Yeah. Okay, meanings. Belonging to and serving something bigger than oneself. Church, perfect example. Scouts, Being Green, Habitat for Humanity, could be just about anything, but something that gets you outside of yourself. Helps us to feel like life has a larger point, a purpose. Meaning for many is necessary for well-being, no matter the mix of other core elements. We have a need to make sense of life and make a lasting mark on life. Meaning overlaps with other core elements, yet also stands alone. For example, one can have loving family and be quite accomplished, yet be depressed due to lack of felt meaning. Tolstoy, famous Russian author, at age 50, years after writing War and Peace, is quoted as saying this: "I had a good wife who loved me and whom I loved. Good children and large property, which was increasing with no pains taken on my part. I was more respected by my kinsfolk and acquaintance than I had ever been. I was loaded with praise by strangers, and without exaggeration, I could believe my name already famous. And yet, I could give no reasonable meaning to any actions in my life. And he got quite depressed. I won't go further than that, but the importance of meaning, right? Another example. I've got a client, she's about 82 years old. Her husband died 2 years ago. She's of sound mind, good health. She has supportive family and friends. Her finances are fine. Her recurrent refrain of despair in our sessions is, and now she's referring to her deceased husband and herself, we did everything together. Life has no purpose anymore. Without meaning, there's a sense of aimlessness and emptiness. Meaning needs to be constructed and tailored to one's life situation, strengths, values, resources. To give you another example, I've got a client much younger, in his 20s, mid-20s, college graduate, good health, employed, decent job, a few friends, but he's depressed. And his frequent refrain is this: okay, life's fine, but what does it all mean? Is this all there is? I'm not sure I want to live the rest of my life just doing a job, having fun here and there, then rinse and repeat. The challenge to form meaning can be great, especially amid loss, suffering, and misfortune. So I've listed in my bullet points here the African Violet Queen. Anybody familiar with that story? Okay. It's a great story, and it's one I keep in mind all the time. So Milton Erickson was a psychiatrist and psychologist, rather famous. He's the father of hypnotherapy. And he was famous for his innovative, his creative interventions with very difficult clients who just could not seem to get better. And so he had treated this one man for depression successfully. And one day after their treatment had ended, the man calls him and says, "Hey, Dr. Erickson, I've got an aunt who is really depressed. And she's recently had to go to being in a wheelchair, which seemingly has just really derailed her. And I wonder if you'd come talk to her. I know that you are going to be speaking in Milwaukee, that's where she lived. You're going to do a workshop in Milwaukee, so could you stop by her house afterwards?" And he said, "Well, okay." So he agreed to do that. And after his workshop, he goes to her house and knocks on the door. She comes with her wheelchair and in her wheelchair and lets him in. And the house is in disrepair. The yard's in disrepair. The curtains are closed. It looks very depressing, right? And she gives him a little tour of the house. And again, everything looks. It's like he's thinking to himself, "Well, no wonder you're depressed, right?" But they get to a part of the house where she's got a greenhouse attached. And in the greenhouse are all these wonderful plants. And he's rather taken aback, and he sees on the top shelf this series of potted African violets. They're just beautiful. And he says, "Wow, you do a great job with these." And she says, "Yeah, it's what I do. That's all I got to do at this point. And, so whatever." And he says, "Well, I know that you think that being in a wheelchair is the cause of your depression." And she says, "Well, yeah, it is. I mean, I can't do anything anymore." And he says, "What do you mean?" He says, "I think the reason actually for your depression is that you've not been a great Christian lately." Yeah. Right? So she's a little offended, and because she had been very involved with her church, and active and so social activities in the church and so forth. You know, she thought she's a pretty good Christian, right? And, but, you know, his method to his madness. And so he says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get back involved in church. And I want you to pay attention to the bulletin. And with weddings, funerals, people in a hospital, okay, any other noteworthy events where you feel like somebody could use a little support or a gift of celebration, I want you to take one of your African violets to these people, right? So she goes, well, okay, I don't see how it's going to help a lot, but I guess I'll do that. So she starts doing that more and more and more. And it becomes a thing, right? Where she's out there all the time giving these African violets to people. Well, she dies, of course, some years later. This is back now in the 1960s, I think. And so the following her death, the headline in the Milwaukee paper was this: African violet queen dies, mourned by thousands. Okay. She had gotten quite famous in that area of Milwaukee. And, but maybe more importantly, of course, she had found new meaning to her life where she thought there was none to be had. So I think it's a great story. And, you know, for me, and I'm sharing this with you, the challenge is to find the African violet parts of ourselves to forge meaning and purpose, right? Little things or bigger things, but to be creative with carving out purpose. Okay. The next core element is accomplishment. Creating goals, working towards goals, completing goals. Yeah, that's pretty important for a greater sense of well-being. I put down there is challenging and stretching yourself. When you do accomplish something, don't shrink it, don't minimize it. Try not to compare the accomplishment, right, to somebody. Well, you know, I know that I did this, but that person did it better. Well, that doesn't help us, right? Rather, celebrate and savor the achievements, big and small. Hillary and I went down to the Twin Cities Marathon a 3 weeks ago. And we sat in the curb. Her nephew was running the marathon. So we plopped ourselves down between the 24th and 25th mile and watched the front runners come by and then the ones behind them, of course. And I was thinking to myself, in relation to this presentation, what a great example of accomplishment, right? These runners have been training for weeks. Runners of all shapes, sizes, ages, speeds. But I'm quite certain that when they crossed that line, they felt a pretty good sense of well-being that's probably going to stay with them for quite some time. Now that's a little maybe grander goal of accomplishment, but I thought it was a perfect example. When we choose goals, try to choose goals that are intrinsically motivated, not the goals that somebody else has for us. Choose goals that satisfy innate needs, such as the need to be expert at something, connecting with others, contributing to communities, rather than goals that have to do with the desire to be rich, powerful, beautiful, famous. Choose goals that align with your values, are reachable, flexible, and ideally goals focused on attaining something rather than running away from something. Any accomplishments out there recently that you guys want to share with the group? Anything that you felt pretty good about? Jody.
Tom and I just, this, June, went and did both of our bucket list. We hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu.
Oh, wow.
Challenge on both of them.
Oh, my goodness. It's a pretty rigorous.
It's, the Inca, yes, it's very, very.
Okay.
And we did, so.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that felt really good about that. Yeah. Yeah, anybody else? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, this, I would just want to share this. My sister was involved also. This, after we finished college, we decided to get into a field of work we wanted to learn and get into our lifestyle. So what we did was this, we interviewed at Insurance Service Office in New York City. And we started working for them. We did audit. I was in audit, she was in claims. We did that for 30-some years.
Wow,
Then after that, we came back to Minnesota and decided, we'll see what we can find here, because we liked working with people, we like working with math, using your brain, feeling confident, happy. See, that's the way we are. We always
Yeah.
have been.
yeah,
Because our dad has always told us, if you keep yourself busy in something that you can grow in and expand in, you'll be a lot happier.
grow and expanding, yeah. right.
See, I'm gonna say this, I know this is gonna sound like I'm bragging, but we had a fantastic father.
Okay,
And after that, then we came to Minnesota after we got out of, well, when we were working for ISO, we were in Minnesota, but our offices were in New York City. Then, so we went into this other work. We worked at Cub Foods as a cashier. We loved it.
yeah,
I loved every single day I went to work. Everything.
yeah, thank you, yeah.
That's how we do things.
Sure, okay, great. Okay, optimism, so we got the 5 that are PERMA, right? And now I've added optimism, I say PERMA plus O. Seligman did not list optimism as one of the core elements, although Seligman and many others recognize the importance of being optimistic. So the way I think about optimism is a positive lean. Belief that life will have more good outcomes than bad. The practice of keeping an eye out for positives. Optimism is not Pollyannish or positive spinning, okay? In fact, there's toxic optimism, right? That can feel very dismissive to other people when you talk about, the struggles that you're going through. Rather optimism in its most healthy sense, it's a mindset that acknowledges the negative while recognizing the positive. I'll just say a few sentences here what I think optimism is. It orients to solving problems flexibly, keeping a generally positive attitude, and staying balanced in the interpretation of events. It's being mindful of personal strengths and the strengths of others. It is giving oneself and others the benefit of the doubt. It's the glass half full. It's the orientation of what went well today. Hillary and I, we've agreed that we come home now and we greet each other in the evening after a day of work. We're really going to stay away from venting about the things that we didn't like about the day, right? And rather, we start out the conversation, well, what went well today? And I'll tell you, it's an orienting question that really guides the discussion in a whole different direction, right? And of course, we feel better as a result. Optimism is the ability to see a future better than the present and the belief of one's power to help make it so. It's the recognition of one's agency, the belief that one has significant control over the outcomes of their lives. Without belief in one's agency, what tends to occur is a feeling of stagnation. Are you guys optimistic? Yeah?
Cautiously.
Try to be? Yeah. Any tricks to optimism you guys have?
Turn off the radio.
Turn off the radio. Yeah,
Someone who says if you live and you die and all the rest is garbage, that person person is probably not ever optimistic.
If you live and you die and the rest is garbage?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably doesn't fit my definition there. Oh, I talk to people all the time about limiting their news intake. Because too much news can be fairly depressing, right? Okay. Quickly, I'll go through this. The benefits to optimism. Researched extensively and results are replicated over and over again. Optimism improves physical and mental health, serving protective, moderating, and better outcome functions. More optimistic people have fewer illnesses, do not get as sick when they're sick, and have better resolutions in serious illness cases. Okay. Including I say serious here is one example, but the common cold. Research that demonstrates that more optimistic people get colds less often. Now, I've had several colds lately. I don't know what that says about me. Truly, I can't figure it out, but I keep getting colds. I don't know. You know, one thing maybe to highlight also about benefits to optimism is no surprise, right? It leads to persistence and resilience. Two important words with positive psychology. And no surprise, you're more optimistic, you're going to persevere to get to a solution as opposed to just throwing your hands up and saying, well, this is terrible, nothing can happen to make it better. Yeah. Happiness misconceptions. All right. So you got this character here on his way to what he thinks is a happy land over here. Happiness is not a place or a destination, a place we arrive at. You know, we kind of think to ourselves, well, when this happens, then I'll be happy. When I get married, when I own a home, when I have children, when I retire, when I get to the weekend, when the Vikings win a Super Bowl, right? Well, that's not gonna happen anyway. So, but you know, happiness is also not a degree of completion here. It's not a trophy that's bestowed upon us once we've taken enough courses. You know, wouldn't it be something if when our dinner guests come over, they congratulate us after looking at a framed diploma on the wall that says PhD in happiness, and then in parentheses, no more courses needed. Right? But of course, it doesn't work that way either. You know, for me, metaphorically, happiness involves driving on a road that reflects our values and includes the core elements that I've talked about before. But there's never a sign on that road that says happiness in 2 exits, right? You know, happiness is an endeavor that unfolds, but it's never done. What's most important is that we keep driving on this metaphorical road and wait for it, making stops throughout our lives at PERMA gas stations. There you go. There's that PERMA again. Okay. A few other misconceptions of happiness, and there are many, but I clumped 2 of them together here. Absence of ill-being equals well-being, and presence of ill-being prevents well-being. Both are misconceptions. One might think as long as I'm free of major anxiety or depression or anger, well, then I'll be happy. But as I discussed earlier, you know, it's common that the feeling of languishing is common, even though one does not have a mental health disorder. You know, hence the importance of moving the well-being needle from bored to engaged, from lonely to connected, from without purpose to life with direction. Similarly, I might think if I have major anxiety, depression, anger, then I cannot come close to actually thriving. Also not true. New research indicates that ill-being and well-being are in separate dimensions. They're not the ends of a single continuum. Thus, well-being can be cultivated and improved in spite of anxiety, depression, anger. And then the other one here, once I hit halfway, the best years are behind me. Celeste, we were at your place for dinner last night. We were talking about, the second half of life, right? And does it have to be less happy somehow? No, not at all. First, we cannot know the future, so it's important to be open to the possibilities ahead of us, perhaps, right? And second, this might surprise you, maybe not. Much research has found that older people actually report being happier than younger people. That surprise you at all?
No,
How
it is
come?
not.
Somebody want to share with you why you're not surprised?
No.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, okay. I'll just read what I wrote about that. So when we begin to recognize that our years are limited, we fundamentally change our perspectives about life. We are motivated to become more present oriented and to invest our time and effort into things in life that really matter. We come to greater appreciation of the positives in our lives and learn how to extract more from them.
That's exactly what we were gonna say.
Yeah.
I think one more thing,
Yeah.
it's like we've had, as we're older, we've had more time to build meaningful relationships and impactful relationships. A lot of the times, especially in the age of like the internet, younger people don't have that organic connection as often as like older people will.
Mhm. Yeah, time to cultivate relationships more deeply, right? Yeah. All right, so Jody gave me the high sign, so I'm gonna skip some slides. This refers real quickly that we return to baseline happiness very quickly after positive and negative events. That idea that, boy, once I get that new car, that's gonna be great, right? But then that shine wears off relatively quickly, right? I was just talking with a friend about the Vikings, and I said, I'll feel better if they win this weekend. And then he said to me, yeah, and then you'll just feel better until they lose again. And, it's true. It's absolutely true. Because the shine doesn't last long.
Yeah.
And there are some offsets. I'll talk about gratitude later. Okay. Probably should cover this real quickly. Happiness and money. Does money buy happiness? Well, no, it doesn't. It is essential to meet basic needs for sure. Okay, and also, of course, it helps fund positive experiences and provide opportunities. So money's helpful certainly to an extent. However, once basic needs are met, money's impact on happiness declines. If you take a person that's, let's say, earns $250,000 and you give them $30,000 as a gift, well, that's really not going to do much for their happiness. I mean, so what, right? A person who's in poverty, and you give them $10,000, well, that's probably going to boost their well-being quite a bit. All right. Materialism, the practice of accumulating nice things with money, not very helpful in the long run in affecting inner well-being. You guys all, I'm sure, knew that. So I want to spend just a little time here. So happiness and faith. It is true that those who are faith-based do report being happier than those who are not. And that folks who are active in their faith communities report being happier than people who are not active in their faith communities. I got to thinking, about happiness and faith and am I a happy Christian? And I can't really say that I think of the word happy too much with being a Christian. So I took a stab for myself that, well, for me, where is the joy of being Christian? And I wrote this down, and I'd be really curious as to anybody else who's willing to share how you find joy in being a Christian. So I wrote down, it's in the relationship with Jesus. It's in the sure and certain hope of a good life through the teachings of Jesus. It's in the giving to those less fortunate and marginalized. It's in the joy of being loved for who I am. and knowing that God is compassionate and forgiving of my many weaknesses. It's in the inner peace afforded in knowing that God is always with me. But I'll do some more thinking about that because again, I don't, in church, we hear the words rejoice all the time, right? But I've got to think more about how to be happier as a Christian, and I'll be interested in comments. Yeah.
I think honestly, being just the ability to serve people. I mean, I see people in church without putting names out there and they serve in different capacities and they just kind of radiate happiness.
Yeah.
Uh, Not saying your name, Kevin. For myself, like in the last year, I've had the opportunity to serve like visibly in doing things and just kind of behind the scenes. And honestly, just it helps bring a joy to my daily life. I just think honestly, a large part of our faith being able to serve others just kind of will carry through and just kind of make you happier.
Just like a friend. Thank you. Yeah.
Also with what you're saying, young man, you treat someone well when they're doing a job, it will all come together later. They say, hey, I did a good job. They appreciated it.
Feels weird being in my fifties and called young man.
Right.
It also has something to do with talking about being in the flow. You kind of forget yourself, and you lose oneself to service, and focus on that.
Yeah.
I guess. For belonging.
I didn't mean it that way.
I'm not offended at all.
Right.
Even during there's the future and there's kind of purpose and means.
Yes.
Tasha.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Very well said. Okay.
My fifties, so.
I'm kind of hurrying us along. Okay. So what can we do to be happier? Well, certainly strengthen and increase the actions of PERMA, right? De-emphasize wealth and fame as overriding priorities. Try not to compare upward. That's that comparison of, well, I make this much money, but you make a little more, right? If I get dwelling on that, then it just goes nowhere. Start circling the drain, right? Cultivate and nurture positive relationships. That's the core element of relationships. Attend to your physical and mental health. Exercise, diet, all kinds of yoga, psychotherapy, praying, lots of ways to take care of yourself physically and mentally. Good sleep, really important, right? Talk to sleep with people all the time. Okay. Balancing reaching for the stars with good enough. Nothing wrong with setting high goals, of course. But when you're making daily decisions, try not to get too perfectionistic. And sometimes it's better from a well-being standpoint just to stop and say, that's good enough. When I was doing these slides, preparing for this presentation, I probably tweaked these slides, 20 different times, different ones. And I just had to stop. It's fine. I'm sure that can be better. but also for well-being, then after the fact, like after this presentation, it's important for me not to then say, think to myself, well, they should have been better, right? Yeah.
It's kind of like your conversation with your wife. It's not like, what did I do wrong for the presentation? You should think to yourself, where did I excel in the presentation?
There you go. Acknowledge the positives, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Cultivate curiosity. Curiosity combats stagnation. It's consistent with a growth mindset. I don't think I'm real naturally curious. Raise your hand if you think you're very naturally curious people. My father was very naturally curious, but not so much me. I have to kind of work at it. Practice gratitude. Focus more on what you have than what you don't have. Hunt for the good stuff. And try to be a little bit nuanced in your practice of gratitude. So think about micro gratitudes instead of the more general stuff of, I'm in good health and I have a good family and I've got a job and I've got a roof over my head. Those are all really important things, right? But also try to, again, be a little more nuanced. I'm really thankful that Hillary was very patient with me today, right? Or I'm really thankful that I had an opportunity to talk with my son Lou during the afternoon when he was at college the other day. I got to talk to him, and so it was great, and very, very grateful for that. Be positive and overall orientation. That's the optimism piece. Hold space for moments of light. That can be difficult, right? I mean, that space feels like it shrinks pretty good when nothing seems to be going well. Sometimes we have to really regroup and redouble our efforts at finding the positives. Don't put pressure on yourself to be happy all the time. And get familiar with your personal strengths. There's lots of inventories out there now that you can take to get in touch with all your various strengths. Strength Finders was a book that came out a while ago. Seligman on his website, Authentic Happiness, there's a free inventory you can take. Or, hey, we're getting there, I promise. Okay. So this is a humor slide. So remember, am I happy? Well, really a more helpful question, technically speaking, would be how much eudaimonia do I feel in relation to perma presence? Okay, so that's a mouthful, right? Now, I promise I don't ask my clients this question. I'm quite sure I wouldn't have any clients. But the curious one, maybe, yeah. Good point. But it's a little more helpful when you just think about it conceptually. What am I doing with regard to these core elements? And don't try to just give myself an answer. Billy, yes, I'm happy, or no, I'm not happy. It doesn't really do much.
Who does that?
What's that?
Who does that? I've never done that in my whole life.
Oh, good. Just that simplistic, am I happy kind of thing?
Yeah, I've
Okay.
never done it.
Yeah. Although, when you ask people, well, what do you want for your children? Well, I just want them to be happy, right? Yeah. Well, what does that mean? So we have to dig a little deeper. Yeah. All right, concluding thoughts. So Seligman, here's one of his quotes. It's all too commonplace to be stuck and languishing in life. Well-being is a presence, the presence of positive emotion, the presence of engagement, the presence of meaning, the presence of good relationships, and the presence of accomplishment. Well-being is not merely being disorder-free, rather it is the presence of flourishing. And then Leo Bomersky, she is a psychologist, I believe, at the University of California. She writes this: we must stop waiting for happiness, and we must stop being terrified of the potential for unhappiness. I'm hopeful that knowing where happiness truly can be found and where it can't will transform your crisis points into straightforward passages of life that are not only unexceptional, but growth promoting. So I like that quote. And that's it. Anybody have any concluding questions, comments?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
How did you, Nelson and Jody Rogdes, get to be psychologists with such simple names?
Yeah, Leo Bomersky, and what is the other one Chick sent me, huh? Yeah.
This last one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. How'd you become a psychologist, Joe? You're with just that simple name of Rock. I don't know what your maiden name was.
Right.
Oh, just,
It is my name.
yeah, right.
I kept my name.
Okay, all right.
I spelled into everything.
Yeah,
It was part of my purpose.
okay, yeah,
And I'm gratefulness. in it.
yeah.
Not all, not every day, but most days.
I took a social psychology class in high school and liked it. Teacher was great, right? And then that was it for me. I wanted to go into psychology. And they told me, with a name like Nelson, you'll never make it. But
My undergrad is in.
I love I made it. So I made it.
Bruce,
Yeah, Tasha.
my undergrad is in psychology.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Nice.
I guess Hofstad was too simple. Too hard, I don't know.
Did you like the courses?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Tasha?
Yeah, I always, you always hear people say, oh, how can I make you happy? Especially when in regards to spouses and, being in partnerships and such with a loved one. So I always try to say, how can I aid in your happiness and contentment? Because you can't really make somebody happy, but you can aid in someone's happiness and contentment.
Right.
It's a lot easier.
Yeah.
I can't understand it, but that's me.
Just saying it's a lot easier to help others be happy when you are happy yourself.
Yeah, that's all.
That's what was happening.
Be happy inside if you're gonna succeed in what you want to get into. Am I right or wrong?
And there's so many aspects to this happiness research.
Okay,
Um,
sorry.
no,
I mean,
well,
Go ahead, give you a thumbs up.
Well, I've always done it the way I just said. And I've always been happy.
that's awesome.
And I'll swear in 10,000 Bibles.
You've never had a moment of unhappiness.
No. I work. I work.
Okay.
I like my
Joke. What's that?
I said, I like my work and I never got bored. I never said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. No.
Okay, okay.
Well, that's fine.
If you like what you're doing, it's not work.
That's true.
And you can make someone's day by simply yes,
That's right.
because it may be the only smile they got then.
Random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
No. And Gretchen, you're saying?
Oh, I like that word contentment. I think Kasha used it.
Yep.
I think that helps because our culture is certainly hedonic focused more, and just reminding you of that contentment with what is.
I get some.
There's a word I came across it when we were preparing for this. Satisficer. Are you familiar with that? I don't know when that came into being, but this research maximizers versus satisficers. And if maximizers are chasing and always trying to get better, more. And there's research that suggests that at least sometimes satisficers are happier maximizers, right?
I think that does go back to this contentment.
Yeah.
And being present and kind of that, if we have purpose in what we're doing right now. We're not, that's where it gets tricky, that accomplishment thing, which is so important.
Yeah,
But that we can't get caught into that chasing and your goal, when you talked about goals, we could stick to that when we think about that.
yeah,
What's gonna make us content.
absolutely.
It's kind of like that, like, well, if I do this, I'm gonna be happier, and then you get there and you're like, oh no, I'm not that happy. I need to get here. It's always like chasing a carrot that's never satisfying.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You can't equate pleasure to being happiness. I think that people who pursue pleasure and happiness, and they're one do drugs and other things to keep that pleasure for it going. And that ultimately doesn't lead to long-term happiness at all.
Well, it can happen, right? The people talk about, I gotta get my dopamine fix,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's short term.
Yeah, it's so short term. Anything else? I really appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Share. Very much.